Yes, I have a question. What would you recommend to someone who just is starting in the industry, who just graduated? What would you say, let's say if you have a child and is going to start in the industry, what would be your best advice?
To sound sort of kitschy, Nike said it best, just do it. I did not study animation in college. I have a literature degree, but I made films in college that turned into a portfolio that got me started in hand-drawn animation in Chicago. I was Captain Crunch for a lot of years. And I love Captain Crunch. The thing that's exciting to me now is that the opportunity for young people and old people to get their hands on tools that are very sophisticated and allow them very little barrier between their impetus and realizing it. It's just phenomenal. We have a little program on my Macintosh, I think it's called iStop Motion. And my 8-year-old is making films, stop motion films with little Playmobil characters in his castles with cuts and dissolves. He's grabbing the language of film and with a $100 program on a laptop computer making films. Just do it. There's really no other way to say it. Grab those resources. Look online. Try to meet with people and animators. Come to things like this. The wonderful array of ways to tie into an animation community and the art of animation, mentorship in animation, DVDs that have lessons from animators. It's pretty exciting out there. And I'll say this about Hollywood ultimately, for all my making fun of it. Hollywood ultimately is a meritocracy. Good ideas are the currency of Hollywood, and a good idea will always float to the top. Always, always, always. So nurture those good ideas and grab all of those resources as early and often as you can. Again, because I'm a little spotlight blind,
Thanks. I just had a quick question in terms of character development in the movies. It often seems that when you watch animated films, the characters so vividly represent the actors themselves. I was actually wondering how you go about that process, whether it starts with the casting of the actual actor and then sort of the mood and the body language of that particular actor is represented in the animation sort of in post-production, or if you guys get the concept for the characters first and then try to fit the actors to that.
You know, it varies film to film. If you watch something like Disney's Aladdin, you clearly see a Robin Williams caricature within the actual design of the character. But it kind of goes back more to what I said earlier when Rex and I would look out the window and recognize our good friends from 1,000 feet away. You cannot help when listening to Steve Carell do Hammy. Even if you have not seen him do it or watched a reference video, that voice is so specific and driving that an animator reaches into some sort of common caricatured motion tool set. And while Hammy was not designed with Steve Carell in mind, Steve Carell was cast after the character had been rigged, I still look at him and I absolutely see Steve. So I think that there's something rather glorious. It goes back to some of the things I think I was observing in my first moment of animation in the mind. There's something about movement that is so much at the core of our identity that even though much of our characters have no intention of imitating, it just kind of comes out naturally because their voice is such a driving and inspiring part of it.
Okay, this question comes from your virtual audience in Second Life.
All right.
Who have been enjoying your presentation.
I'm sorry they had to
didn't get to
miss.
see all of it.
You know, I joked earlier, but let me apologize to the people who have been kind enough to tune in on Second Life and say that there were some things that I shared that were just really impossible for me to share online. So my apologies to them all. So.
Oh, well, they had a great time anyway. This question is from Stephen. Stephen asks, what do you think about the proliferation or the popularity of machinima or screen capture films that are being made? You can see them on YouTube. You can see them on machinima.com. Using virtual worlds like Second Life, but also using things like existing products, video games.
I think I need to support my own statement. I think every new art form is exciting. Every new art form allows us another way to see into our souls. That's what art is trying to do, is show us something that we have not been able to see as clearly without art as a lens. So I look at whether it's a mashup of an existing film and somebody's done something irreverent, but actually very intelligent and observational on it, or any number of new sort of internet-only sort of communication and animation forms. So I'm thrilled to see it. I actually hope that some of this makes its way into more accessible popular markets and even commercial markets. I think we're actually on the cusp of seeing some of the sort of dynamic things going on in the art world online make an influence on feature films, including live-action features.
You said that you developed the photography aesthetic in Over the Hedge. What do you want to develop for your next film that isn't already out there, that you can't already do?
That's a fun question because these films do take 4 years, and my next film, if I'm lucky, will be 2012. Lord. And so in a weird sort of way, with the technology moving as fast as you have to design a film that cannot be done. Because if you design it with the tools you have, it will be dated and rather old hat. And that isn't merely to obey the Michael Bay first principle of spectacle. It is because with every new tool, there's an interesting array of abilities as a filmmaker and narrative artist to talk. So that being said, there are a couple things I'm really interested in. All of Hollywood is shifting to stereo 3D. Put on the glasses. I think that there's something to that that has not been explored yet that is actually narrative. In the same way that a rack focus is a way to use a camera limitation to guide the eye from something in the foreground to the background or vice versa, I think there's ways to use stereo to not just be a goofy gimmick on top of it, but to actually identify it as a tool of the narrative structure. So we have 2 tests that we're doing next week on ways that I think will be really fun for an audience on using stereo not just as an add-on. So that's one of them. The other stuff that I'm sort of interested in is getting a way to capture camera movement that is more celebrating what an actor's physicality brings. One of my favorite interviews with a director was with Steven Soderbergh on Sex, Lies, and Videotape. And he described a scene in which James Spader was sitting mesmerized watching one of his videotapes when the doorbell rang and Spader snapped out of his haze and went and answered the door. Soderbergh evidently was sitting here, and the camera is there, and Spader's there. They're all in this tight little triangle. And he said he watched take after take and said to himself, oh my God, this is awful. This is just not working. He just looked spacey and out of it. This is not working. He got the dailies back that night as they were processed, and he watched it, and they were stunning. And he realized he was not the point of the performance. The camera was. And even though the camera was 3 feet away from him, the energy of the actor was being poured there, not here. I've always found that fascinating. I think the same is true in animation. I think that there's a mistake being made, frankly, in computer animation where one can actually do the animation and then later move the camera. I think that's a horrible disservice to animators and actors. I think that there's things that I'm looking into now about making sure that the connection between performance, animation, and even the way a voice actor performs and the camera is far more immediate and connected.